Hi guys, I wanted to talk to you about paper organization and getting rid of paper clutter. I have been asked about this quite a bit lately, and I am planning to do the office zone, and it holds a lot of our paperwork, so I thought it would be easier if I showed you all of that first and explained it. Plus, like I mentioned, I have been getting asked about this a lot. So this video will be about all the papers that come into our home on a daily or weekly basis and what do we do with them all. I have a very simple paper organization system. I don't have anything really fancy in it and spend a lot of money or anything. I don't have, really pretty folders. They're just plain, and it works for me. If you want to spend the money to get, pretty fancy folders, then by all means you can do that. But for me, I just like to keep it simple. So the first thing that comes to mind is mail. And one thing that we've done is eliminate some of the mail that actually comes to our house before we even have to file it or, recycle it or whatever. A lot of our bills we pay online. Several companies will actually give you like a $5 credit if you go paperless, because it actually saves them money because they don't have to print it off, they don't have to pay for the paper, and they don't have to pay for postage to send it to you, and it's obviously better for the environment because there's less waste. So you could definitely look into paying your bills online. So just by eliminating some of the bills that are coming to your home, that will eliminate a little bit of paperwork. You can also look at things like store ads and magazine subscriptions and things like that, and just evaluate if you actually still use those and want those. If it's, paperwork that's coming from a store that you never shop at, you could either call or, look online for ways to stop that. So when we get our mail, we try to deal with it right away. What I mean by that is when we get our mail, there will be junk in there. There will be sales ads and things that we don't even want to look at because it's somewhere that we never shop, or, just random junk mail. And we will go ahead and put it in our recycling box that is outside. So that's just one step, one thing that doesn't end up on the countertop or on the table. And then if it's something that has sensitive information that is still junk mail, like a credit card application or something like that, that we do not want to keep, we'll just go ahead and shred it. Now, some of you might get home and check your mail and you have a baby to change, or, you're just getting home from work and your hands are full and you might not be able to get to the mail right away. Well, rather than, putting it on the countertop or your table, maybe you can have just one spot, and then part of your routine later in the evening is to go through that mail and put each thing where it needs to go. And I'm going to kind of show you the different places that we keep our different things, but we have one spot for bills, we have one spot for store coupons, one spot for restaurant coupons and things like that. So everything has a spot instead of it just going on the kitchen countertop, and that just makes it really simple. So I'm going to show you some of those in just a minute. So like I mentioned, we just have very plain, simple folders, but they work. And this is in my husband's office, so I'm not going to have, a really flowery folder that wouldn't fit in here anyway. We just keep our file folders here, and then I also have a file cabinet that has some things. So I'm going to pull it out so that you'll be able to see it better. So this is our very simple file system. It works well for us, but it isn't, super fancy or anything. So we have this thing here that holds the folders, and you can find these at Staples or pretty much anywhere. And we did have another file here, but it was more sensitive information that I couldn't show. So we just have a file for to do or to call for home. And in here we just put things that we need to get to. So say we got a bill and we need to call about it, or say we need to renew something and it has to do with either our personal life or home. We put it in there, and that way we know to get to it later, and it has a spot instead of it sitting on the counter so we don't forget about it. It goes in here and we look through this regularly. And because my husband works from home, he has a to-do call for work as well. So he has that, and he just has his work stuff. And then in this to file folder, these are things that we might get from somewhere or come in the mail, and we need to file them somewhere, but we don't have the time to do it right now. And this is just a temporary spot for it just so it doesn't end up on the table or on the countertop. And then we look through these regularly, like I mentioned. And then the miscellaneous folder is mostly for my husband's things that he doesn't really have a spot for yet. And that way it just has somewhere to go until he, finds a spot for it. And then we just have a folder for driver's training because our son is in driver's training and you have to log their hours and all of that. So those are just very simple file folders. These would be short-term files, things don't stay in there long. And then we also have this filing cabinet. So the first folder we have is bills to pay, and we keep our budget in here and any paperwork that we need for paying bills. So when we get a bill, we just take it out and stick it in the envelope that we need to mail it back. We write when the bill is due on our budget, and we just keep it in here in the order that they're due. So we keep the next bill that's due in the front and then the last bill that's due in the back, if that makes sense. So this is just a place to put all the bills so they're not lying around, and that just keeps it neat and organized, and we don't have to worry about where the bill is when it's, time to mail it out. I will explain some of the other files that I have in a minute, but since I'm just talking about mail and where to put everything right now, I will stick to that and get to those things in a little bit. Often in the mail we'll get store coupons, restaurant coupons, and things like that. So I have this very simple binder, and I did a whole video on that, and I'll link that below. But it's really just a place for me to keep everything. In the front of my binder, I have two pouches. One is for store coupons and one is for restaurant coupons. So when I get things in the mail that I want to use later, I'll just add those to the pouches. If I happen to get a catalog I want to look at later, I'll just add it to the front of my binder, and that way I know where to look for it. And if I happen to get a catalog or coupons for stores that I never plan to shop at, or things I don't want to look at, I'll just go ahead and recycle those. But this is a great place to keep it all together, and that way when I go shopping, I know where to look for the coupon. It's not in some random drawer stuffed in my purse or something. You can also keep the menus for any restaurants that you'd like to order from in your binder too, or have a folder for those, and that way you know exactly where to find them when you need them. Another thing that can really pile up is the paperwork that we get from our children's school. So if you've seen any of my other videos, this is the door that goes between the kitchen and the basement, and on the back of it I have this big bulletin board here. This was actually here when we moved in the house, and it works so well. Of course I had to take all of the paperwork down because it had the name of my children's school and phone numbers and things like that. So I just wanted to show you what we use. I would usually have their school calendar up here, their youth group activity calendar and sports calendars, things like that. You could also have, if your children's have like a lunch schedule or whatever, just all of those things that you want to look at on a regular basis. I would highly recommend a big bulletin board. I love that this is out of the way, but I can still, just close the door and see it whenever I want. You could also put a bulletin board inside of a cabinet or inside of a closet. You can use some type of magnetic board, whatever works for you, but I just like having one spot to keep everything. My boys are teenagers, so they keep track of their own schoolwork and paperwork, and they have their own binders that are required in class and everything, so they handle all of that. But when they were younger, you're constantly getting papers in. A lot of their teachers had a folder for paperwork that came home, and then we would have to look through it and sign it, and they were supposed to bring it back. But as far as like all their schoolwork and paperwork that's coming in, that can really be overwhelming sometimes. What we did, we had a homework folder, and if there were study guides and things like that that they were going to need for studying for a test later that week or the next week, or even papers that they needed to do a project, we would keep all of that all of those papers in the folder on one side, and then on the other side they would have extra paper and things like that to do their homework, so it was all together. As far as all the papers that come in, do you keep it or do you just throw it away? That's completely up to you. I had a tote and I kept it at the top of my boys' closet, and it wasn't very large, but in there I would keep some of their papers that I would like to have later. So if they wrote a funny story for a certain project, or they like really nailed their history test and I want to keep that so I can look at it later, I would put it in there. And then in between I had their report cards for each grade, so that way each of them has that one tote and it isn't, you know, gobs of paper. I didn't keep, you know, every single test that they ever did, but that way I can look at it later and I do have some of it. So that's kind of what I did. I hope I explained that well. I don't have the things available right now to show you. Some of the totes are in storage, so I didn't really want to dig those out. But that's pretty much what we did with the school paperwork. The next thing I wanted to talk about is receipt. Also in our filing cabinet, we have a file folder for receipts, and I'm going to take this out just so that you'll be able to see this better. So inside of this file folder labeled receipts, I have some folders, and I separate the receipts into these separate folders, and that just really helps me to be able to find them. And I apologize for the awkwardness of this, but I'm just trying not to show any account numbers or anything like that. So I'm going to show you the different folders that I have in here. Inside of my receipt folder, I have a file with my name on it, and this is where I would keep the receipts for things that I purchase. So if I buy clothes or makeup or things like that that are just for myself, I have the receipts in here and I know exactly where to find them. I don't file ours according to month or anything like that because I think that makes it a little harder to find. And part of my zone cleaning in the office is to go through our receipts every 7 weeks, so that's when I go through them. So in here are just receipts so in this folder are just receipts for things that I purchased for myself. And then John has a receipt, and this would be things that he purchased for himself. So if he bought golf clubs or something for golf or whatever, and it's just something for him and he wants to have the receipt for it, that way he knows exactly where to look for it, and it's in here. We also have a folder for our boys, and this is where we would keep any receipts that were for things that we purchased for our boys. So if we bought them clothes or shoes or sports equipment or something like that, the receipt would go in here. And then again, that way I know exactly where it is and I'll be able to find it, rather than trying to remember if I bought it in March or January or whatever and trying to locate a receipt. I know it will be in here if it's something for my boys. I also have a folder for our house, and this is for things that I purchased for the house. So if I bought something to decorate the house with or whatever, it would go in here. I do have a long-term folder for things for the house, and I'm going to talk about that in another video because this will be incredibly long if I include all of that. So there aren't things like warranties or receipts for TVs or anything like that in here. This is just like, would just be like if I bought a new comforter and I wanted to try it on the bed and make sure I liked it, I would keep it in here. Or if I bought some new curtains and I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep them, the receipt would be in here until I keep it, then it would go in another spot, and I'll talk more about that. But this is kind of a short-term spot for a receipt. And then we also have one for our checking account, and this is where we would keep things that we used our debit card for. We keep all of our paid bills, receipts, and all of that in a separate file. But say we went to a restaurant and we used our debit card, we would put the receipt in here. It was just a short-term file for, purchases that we made using our debit card. We also have one for credit card, and these are purchases that we might have made on our credit card, and we want to, keep track of how much we spent on there so that we can pay it at the end of the month when the bill is due. So sometimes we've done different promotions where if you, purchase all of your gas, you'll get, points towards free hotel rooms or something like that. We would keep all of the receipts for our gas in here, so that way we know exactly how much we spent and we can pay the bill when it's done. I hope that I hope that helps. Of course, you don't have to do everything exactly the way I do it. This is just what works for our family. And sometimes when you do something for so long, it makes sense to you, but trying to explain it to someone else might be a little bit difficult. So I hope I explained it well. And a lot of miscellaneous paperwork I keep in my binder, and I love having this because it's just thin, and I keep it in my desk drawer, and it holds a lot of things that I wouldn't normally have a spot for, and that just eliminates them from being all over the house. So I've already showed you how I keep my coupons and things in here, and I did cover up a lot of things because I just didn't go through it and take everything out, and I've already shown this in another video which I'll link below. But I have a tab for to do, to purchase, and this is where I would keep a list of things that I need to purchase at the store. I've mentioned before in my closet and dresser drawer videos that I keep a list of things that I need to purchase. So if I need a certain pair of shoes or a certain necklace or whatever, I have a list of those. And then if my boys need something, I'll have that on a to purchase list. Or if we need something for the house, I'll have that on a list. My to-do list, the daily one is on my phone, but this list would be for things that I can't get to that particular day. So I would have, some smaller house projects that we needed to get to, such as, paint the trim in this room, or fix this or fix that, just different things like that. And that way I can have a spot for that list instead of, it's just tucked in some drawer somewhere. And then I do have my detailed cleaning list, the zone work that I've been showing you guys. I have that in there. I have a tab for YouTube, and this is where I just keep all of my ideas. I have some things scheduled out, and that way it's just a spot to keep all of that paperwork. I do have a tab for Christmas, and I just keep my Christmas list in there, my Christmas card list and things like that. It's just very simple. And then in the back I have a section for project, and I'm not working on a house project right now, but say I was redecorating a room, I would keep all of the stuff in here, and that way it's just in a spot. You could have just a simple folder for that as well. And I have a pouch here, and this is where I would keep paint samples or whatever, just to have a spot for it. I could keep the receipts if I'm buying and returning things in here, and that way everything has a spot in our house. And it's so simple. As you guys saw, I don't have any elaborate things, and it didn't cost me hardly any money, but this just eliminates everything from being all over the house. So I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions at all, feel free to comment below. I am planning to do another paperwork video that will talk about, where to store warranties and long-term paperwork and things like that. That one will probably be a little shorter than this one. But if you have any questions regarding those things, feel free to ask in the comments because I haven't recorded that yet. Thank you for watching.